Hey everyone, welcome to Office Hours with Cloud Posse, where we discuss the latest DevOps news, AWS announcements, and Terraform insights, all sourced from our sweetops community, plus a live Q&A you can't find anywhere else. It's August 27th, 2025. I'm your host, Eric Osterman. Real quick, I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. Cloud Posse sells AWS reference architectures backed by Terraform to get you production ready in less than 2 weeks. So if that sounds interesting, just head over to cloudposse.com and you'll learn more there. So how can you maximize today's session? First off, our format is very informal. You can engage as much as you'd like, ask questions, and if you're curious about any of our open source tools like Atmos, this is a great place to ask. For those on the recording, we host these calls live. You can register by going to cloudposse.com/officehours. Again, cloudposse.com/officehours, where you'll find the opportunity to register. We'll send an invite to your inbox so you can join these weekly calls. I do have one ask. If you find any portion of today's session valuable, share it with your team. You can head over to youtube.com/cloudposse to find the recording there. And that's how we spread the wealth of knowledge. So let's get into what I found interesting this week. All right. First thing, this was really interesting for me. For those that don't know, I think I've been working on AWS since, gosh, I always get it mixed up. It's either 2004 or 2006. Whenever it was in a private beta, invite only, they only had EC2 instances. They had no load balancers, no databases, nothing else. And we tried to launch a startup at the time, which was, yeah, a little bit early for that. Anyways, I've been working with it ever since, and now I have, you could say, what is the curse of knowledge. Now, the curse of knowledge is usually referred to as like knowing so much you don't know what other people understand, so you sometimes just brush over complex topics and things like that. Well, there's another part of the curse of knowledge, which is sometimes your data, your knowledge can just be out of date. So I thought this was pretty interesting. I think fortunately my knowledge on these topics were still pretty current, but it just goes to show how much these different systems have evolved over the years. And AWS has been out for 20 years. You think of cloud as being a relatively new technology, but not at this time. So this is an interesting article to read over to get updated on some of the recent updates that have happened across EC2, S3, networking, Lambdas, and so forth. I guess just a highlight under each one of these things used to be that you had to relaunch EC2 instances to change groups or roles. Not anymore. You can live migrate. The reason you see fewer host notifications, like hosts becoming unavailable, is because AWS has the ability to live migrate instances on their fleet. So that's why fewer and fewer degraded instance notifications. I thought that was real interesting. And how spot instances, are, taking over now more and more and more stable. So S3, what was something that stood out here? I think one of the things they're missing here was the fact that, oh yeah, it's not eventually consistent anymore. And then you have read after write consistency. I think that's a really interesting one to remember. And the other one that I don't see here yet is that they have, or maybe this was implemented using the read after write. What is locking on S3, like for S3 backends for Terraform? What are the mechanics under the hood that implement that? Anyone know off the top of your head? Is it this read after write consistency that the optimistic locking is done with? All right, moving on. On the networking side, yeah, Lattice is pretty cool. We haven't really worked with it yet, but it's kind of like a service mesh that spans all of your accounts that you can plug services into and not deal with things like transit gateways and VPC peering. This was an interesting one. Availability zones used to be randomized across accounts, but you can now get statically aligned zone IDs across your accounts using Resource Access Manager, aka RAM. All right, we'll share this link after the call, so you can catch up on that. Anything to add to this? Next. This is an interesting article. And I actually had a different take on it before I read the article to its conclusion. And I think the author makes a good case, but I think there's a alternative way of looking at it. So bus factor, if you're not familiar, like this is the concept, like if somebody on your team gets hit by a bus, can the project continue to operate unencumbered? So for example, if you have a bus factor of 1, that means if you lose that one person, you cannot continue to manage that project. Or a bus factor of 2, you can at least lose one engineer to run in with a bus and continue operating. The argument here is if you're taking a strictly AI first approach on your projects, like vibe coding from the get-go, everything, there is no institutional knowledge on the team. So you actually have no resiliency whatsoever because nobody actually knows how the whole thing works. And I get the argument, and it's not a bad argument, it's not a weak argument, but let me propose something slightly different. Bus factor of 0 is alternatively ultimate resiliency. It means that you have no bus factor. It means that no one on the team, if you are successfully operating as a business and you have bus factor 0 and you're using AI, you essentially have perfect resiliency. But it comes down to systems, right? You're not going to have a stable, repeatable, reproducible system if the fundamentals of how you're using AI are not there. For example, using your agentic rules, like the cursor rules, the Claude MD, the agents.md, having best practices around how changes are introduced to environments, proper testing, still having code reviews, having honestly a factor of agentic code review like CodeRabbit in there as well, and so forth. So in that sense, if you get that working, I think it's ultimate resiliency, and I don't think it's far away. I think in the next 3 years, we're going to see companies operating more and more that way. And frankly, in massive enterprises where you have 1,000 microservices, that's still kind of the case. Yeah, you have domain experts in some realm of those services or microservices, but like the schemas and the data models and everything exceed human comprehension, but they don't exceed AI comprehension, and that's why I'm bullish on this. Any counter arguments to this, or am I just flat out wrong? No thoughts on this one, huh? I thought this would be an interesting one. All right, next topic. All right, next one. This is one that I was actually on a sales call yesterday, and they introduced me to this. I thought it was really cool, so I had to set it up, and I've been using this for the last 24 hours. So take this with a grain of salt, this recommendation. I think it's an early project. I did run into some bugs along the way that I was able to work around. So Conductor is a desktop CLI currently available for Mac OS, totally free, sits on top of Claude, and lets you work concurrently on any number of repositories with any number of concurrent branches because it uses Git workspaces. So each Git workspace is checked out inside of a .conductor/branch name folder. And if you're not familiar with Git workspaces, it's a native capability of Git to have a complete parallel copy of code at any given commit or branch. And then this is basically a nice little UI on top of it, so you can parallelize feature development across all of these workspaces. And then when you're ready, you just hit Git push. So for example, let's see if I can find it here quickly. Where did it go? Conductor. Here we go. So here's Conductor. I'm trying a few things out on it. The first step is you add your repository to the project, either from a URL or you can open a local file system project. So here I added Atmos. You can create a new workspace. You can integrate it with linear. So if you have nicely defined linear tasks, that can set up the prompt and everything for your coding. One of the things that I found really nice is going into plan mode. And when you go into plan mode, you're just interacting with it in a way where it will never make any changes. And you iterate on that until it can regurgitate to you a comprehensive plan of attack that it's going to take. And then it breaks that down into steps and executes each step. And then you can review everything it changed here on the side very conveniently. Let's say something you didn't like something, rather than you could just jump in and just start chatting with it again and say what to change. Or instead, what I've been liking is I just go back into plan mode and I describe the problems. I describe what I'd like based on the local review of these files and the changes it made, what I'd like it to do. And then it comes up with a new plan of attack. Then I tell it to execute that plan of attack. And then when you're all done and ready, you can click a button to open that pull request. Here's an example of a pull request. Well, this was something else I was working on. But here's adding test coverage for one of the packages in Atmos that it implemented, including helping me update the version of our Golang lint CI. So far, pretty happy with it. Nothing's going to be a silver bullet, but it's a workflow that I was frustrated with trying to use Cursor. And like if you've been using Cursor a lot, which I have, at some point you're like, I just want to start doing all these things concurrently, and then it gets painful trying to do that in Cursor. Anybody been using Conductor, similar tools, other things I should check out?
Have you checked out Warp?
Say that again? Warp?
Warp.
Yeah. Warp is pretty cool. It took me a really long time to actually set it up, install it, and use it, but I had a really pleasant experience getting it working at first. I use ASDF, and ASDF has gone through some major updates, deprecated some features. And when I tried Warp out, it immediately was able to figure out how I needed to upgrade, what I needed to change, and I loved it. It was like Cursor for the command line.
Yeah, it's awesome.
You're using Warp as well?
Yeah, I tried it out, and then I on an empty directory, I asked it to create me an Atmos boilerplate, and then deploy EKS, and it did everything and fixed things.
Really?
Yeah.
That's pretty slick. And then, the other cool thing about it is, let's see here, is how you can have like the team notebooks in Warp. And I haven't had a chance to test that out yet. Have you looked into the team notebooks in Warp?
Oh yeah, the Warp Drive. I think that's what.
Oh,
yeah, not yet. I'm trying to try. It's called
Yeah.
Warp Drive.
Warp Drive. Yeah, so that's cool because you have that kind of shared context then for your team. And I think this comes back down to optimizing for what do you call it? The bus factor zero. Can you become more effective closer and closer to bus factor zero, having no redundancy in humans? I think with more documentation, better tests, that is on the horizon. Let's see. Next one. All right. So, this is trending briefly here on Hacker News. It could be called a puff piece for system initiative. However, reading over this and also reading over some of the commentary on the Hacker News post where I saw it, it finally gave me some insight or understanding into system initiative. So for those of you who haven't heard, System Initiative is a alternative to Terraform, CDK, CloudFormation, etc. It's by the founder of Chef. I always forget his name. And it is a fledgling project, so it hasn't, by the founder's own account, it hasn't yet, had massive success. But it's taking a pretty radical approach, especially when you come from a Terraform background, to how to manage infrastructure. So let's talk about what some of the major pain points are with Terraform for a moment, right? One is that you have this static state file that's on S3 or some backend storage system that you have. And when you're working with Terraform, you're basically producing migrations or transformations of that state file from one state file to another state file. And on the one hand, that's kind of elegant, right? It's been practiced for database migrations forever. But anybody who's worked with Terraform for a long time can, tell you that it feels a little bit painful as a workflow. One of the things that would be really neat to do, and it's painful with Terraform, is like, ephemeral environments or testing changes before applying them. And what System Initiative has done is that state layer is instead inside of a database. I'm not sure if it's a relational database or a NoSQL database or something like that. But because it's in a database, they can take snapshots of that very easily, and they can reproduce what they call digital clones of any existing state any number of times. And without even applying it, you can manipulate that, and then they have a UI that lets you see what that future state would look like. Since they also have a snapshot of what the state was at any given point of time, it still has a lot of the benefits of the state file that you have with Terraform, arguably in some ways easier, because with Terraform, to go back to another state, you got to, check out that commit, rerun a plan, get a new plan file, and that's what's going to change. With System Initiative, you could go back to this, snapshot of what everything was at a given point in time and just tell it to synchronize it. Kind of like what, Argo CD is maybe doing and continuously reconciling and synchronizing the desired state of what you want. But instead of the Git being backed by Git, it's being backed by a mutable database. Cloud Life is a company, I think they're based out of LA. I remember meeting him at one point. And there's an article of them testing it out, redeploying their own infrastructure using System Initiative. Anybody have more to add about System Initiative or related? I think one of the problems that System Initiative has been struggling with is that the way they present it has been a little bit too abstract, almost like when HashiCorp came out with Waypoint and nobody understood what it was, and everybody said, so it's CICD, and they're all, no, it's not CICD. And they said, so it's CI? No, it's not CI, but it does CI. Is it CD? It's not CD, but it does deployments. And so anyways, that product, the open source version at least, has been archived, and I think they have a commercial offering around it. Never hear anything about Waypoint as a product though out of HashiCorp. Michael?
Yeah, just had one. I guess a couple comments on System Initiative. But first, I didn't know if you were sharing your screen, but we were still seeing your Composer screen. I don't know if there was a screen for your System Initiative discussion.
Yeah. Sorry, thanks. I did forget to.
Yeah, no worries. But yeah, my take on it is I kind of got turned off because it felt like ClickOps when they first introduced it.
Right.
Because the interface is very graphical. And I mean, I guess that's so you can see the system that you're laying out, the architecture and all that kind of stuff. But then if you have to, then I've used tools before that are graphical, and then you punch down into the box, and then you could actually apply code or customize or whatever, and then that gets saved back to the system. But as somebody who's like really dialed into a GitOps workflow where everything is code, everything is version, you try to take 2 or 3 steps back from ClickOps, then going like ClickOps as the first and foremost thing that you're doing to interact with the tool. I'm like, yo, it's not revolutionary. It's kind of like what devolutionary? It really gave me pause. I see the benefits of it, like the digital clones being able to sort of like maybe play out how things are going to change if you change something before you apply it, which you kind of get from Terraform and CloudFormation and everybody else. You're just doing it graphically. I get it, but at the same time, I'm like, you know, it's just jarring to go from code to go to a GUI. That's my main take on it.
Yeah, and it is hard to optimize for both. And thanks for bringing that point up. I think that was the same thing that caught me off guard as well when I first saw the demos of System Initiative. It looked like yet another GUI that's going to replace all these other tools, and you're never going to need to drop to code, to shell again to deploy your infrastructure. And these kinds of tools, they demo pretty well, like on a sales call, but push comes to shove, do you really want to manage infrastructure via ClickOps? So my understanding is that it's a hybrid, and that what it does is it has like a modeling tool that is graphical that lets you design it that way. And then there's some kind of a framework around it. I think instead of like they're not piggybacking off of Terraform providers, they re-implemented a provider kind of ecosystem. I don't know how mature it is, but it's all based on TypeScript, I believe, in the end, and that lets developers develop in a more code-friendly manner. All of that said, don't know how it plays out in practice, and if you can really optimize for both experiences at the same time. Can you have a great GUI and a great code experience? And I relate to you on what you're saying, Michael, where like Grafana dashboards, right? On the one hand, trying to design Grafana dashboards through code from scratch, God help you. But using the UI for Grafana and creating dashboards and everything is great. Then export to JSON, and now you can manage generations of that dashboard with minor tweaks just by editing the JSON. That said, it's no replacement for using the UI.
Yeah, I share the same sentiment for Grafana.
Yeah. All right. Any other thoughts on System Initiative? All right. Next one, excited for this update. Claude is piloting a new Claude extension for Chrome. Everybody who has a security background just got shivers or goosebumps hearing that and the implications for it. And that's why this is being rolled out in a limited trial for Max Plan users. And what they're trying to address is frankly the same problem that affects humans. So phishing is a problem whether you use your human browsing the web or you're using an extension like this in your browser, only that the browser one is susceptible to prompt injection. Things that you can't even see on the page could influence its behavior. So the standard approach to this is to have, I forget, had adversarial agents that keep each other in check, and they're building a separate agent that is trying to identify, suspicious events, I guess, or I don't know, tokens, if you will, that come up in the session. So initial results showed that they got it from 23% down to like 11%. I think I saw somewhere. Yeah, 23 to 11%. So still, this is still pretty high. That 11% of the time, it would still take the nefarious action, but it is a 50% improvement in some short amount of time. Thoughts on this? I haven't checked to see if this also supports like the inspector on Chrome, but that would be to me incredibly awesome. One of the challenges when you're developing React apps and getting everything working is some of the feedback is in the console logs and being able to inspect the live DOM and things like that. And this would just put cursor on steroids if you can connect it with this. All right, no other thoughts on that? Moving on. The last one, minor announcement. If you've been using add-ons for EKS, it's kind of annoying that they would only go into, I believe, like the system namespace, or I forget which namespace it was. Now you can pick the namespace, so you have more control over where the add-ons get deployed. Add-ons are a pretty convenient way to install managed additions to your cluster, like external DNS. And there's a community of add-ons available as well as the ones officially from AWS. All right, all I got. Let's see, check the chat. Yeah, I didn't see your comment there earlier, Ben. Somehow I missed it when we were talking about bus factor. And your comment was, you think it's cool in theory, but not practical. You still have the bus factor of the person who runs the AI and knows the vision of the product. Well, I would argue on the first point, the person who runs the AI, I would say in the early stages, right? Until you get that systematized, productized, documented well enough throughout the organization, and then I think it's fine. But
Yeah,
on the product, that could be hard. Like you lose a person with a product vision, that could be hard to replicate.
I guess where I'm at is I hear or I read these titles of news articles, and I'm sure they're clickbait, but it's like just laid off the entire engineering department and replaced it with AI, and I'm like, oh no, like that that just seems terrible. So that's where I'm at. Like
Yeah,
AI is a great tool, makes you faster, but it's not it's not there yet. And the speed
yeah.
at which it's developing, I think it'll get there pretty fast where um you can really just let it loose and it'll build you everything. But so I guess right now it feels like that bus factor is it's still, it's not it can't, I think.
So I guess it's a change of thought. Like, so instead of recruiting for people who know this specific stack and all the intricacies with it, which doesn't hurt, you should still probably hire for that. You can possibly lower the bar a little bit to people who are, what's the word? I'm proficient in agentic coding or vibe coding.
Yeah.
And you can get pretty good command of a code base quickly doing that without having worked with the code base. That said, there's definitely examples where it falls apart. Especially in, one of the things we're discovering is the challenge is working in a distributed code base, not in a monorepo. I was talking to Dan on our team about that at our internal office hours, and um, that feels like where it hasn't caught up yet. Doing this across multiple repositories, multiple pull requests, etc.
Yeah. I, I know I tried that with a personal project, and I found that the AI, so I used Git subtree as opposed to Git submodules. And regardless of which one I tried though, I tried using a bunch of essentially submodules of
Yeah, yeah,
plugins. And it just, despite the agent.md saying like always pull,
yeah.
synchronize it with the other remote, it just never worked and it just always failed. And I'm sure it's fixing my environment and the AI's environment as well, but it just wasn't worth the investment at that time.
That's interesting. You tried that. That was one of the things floating in the back of my mind. Could you use subtrees or what do you call it? What's the other one?
Submodules.
Submodules. Yeah. And yeah, I could, dude, humans struggle consistently using both of those. I can only imagine the AI having trouble with it. Plus the cursor rules and the Claude MD and the agent MD are advisory at best. They never follow those things to the T.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So any other discussion topics for today? Anything interesting? I saw Terraform 1.13 was released, which added some lightweight stack functionality in the core of BSL licensed Terraform. Has anyone had a chance to check that out, or can explain how that works? Yeah. Any other what is Superblocks? Let's check that out. Elvis, do you want to talk about Superblocks?
Yeah, just curious if anyone tried it. More on having maybe a single page for SRE or dev usage for internal use, single page visits instead of going to multiple locations to troubleshoot your app, maybe something like that. Custom.
I believe that's the way that Atlassian is going, combining like Service Manager with Ops Genie with I forget all their they combine a bunch of things into like an internal what do you call them? Developer platform.
Developer portal, yeah.
Yeah,
Kind of like a developer page.
Yeah. Yes, there's been a few of these over the years. I haven't checked this one out. Anybody use Superblocks? It's a resounding no. Michael Jenkins says Superblocks pricing model is based on the number of creators, internal users, external users of your chosen deployment model. So it's definitely geared towards enterprise.
Yeah, and I just share that. I was just I almost always go to pricing when I see these new projects come out because I just want to know like what's the bottom line going to be for me. I mean, I work with enterprises, and sure, they can pick up a tool. Uh, Definitely a longer process than me as a individual developer working on my own side projects or whatever, picking up a tool. But then when I see, if I don't see the pricing, and I mean, I'm not turned away by $20 a month, $50 a month. I mean, maybe even more than that if it's a worthwhile tool and I'm going to see the benefit of it. But for when I see wording like that, it's like, yeah, well, I guess that's for enterprise. I mean, they clearly say that they're building internal apps. So um, I don't see much utilization for me unless somebody was like, hey, can you use this app that we purchased to build our internal apps? So yeah, looks
Well,
cool though.
it makes sense. I mean, I think it's cart before the horse if you're a smaller company building internal apps for your small dev team. But if you're
Exactly.
multi-hundred person or larger organization, I could see it paying dividends.
Yeah, and I guess that's the other flip side of the discussion is um, the trade-off of build versus buy. I mean, it's age-old discussion where I mean, enterprise, they're using managed services as well. You can use GitHub as an enterprise. Microsoft uses GitHub. Um, you can use all these other. I mean, we talked about Jira, Jira Cloud, et cetera, et cetera. But then you're paying the subscription cost versus build it once maybe and then maintain it in house, and you're definitely saving some change on that. But you got to build it, you got to maintain it. So there's definitely a trade off there, and I could see maybe it being a little bit more complex if it is AI generated because you don't have that person or the SME that kind of knows what's what outside of the prompts, perhaps. But I mean, if you got a team behind you, now they become the service provider for this managed service that's AI generated for your internal app. Maybe that supply chain kind of works to support you. Then yeah, it's probably all good.
Maybe it's easier to hand off to you have more senior people build it, but then it's maintainable within the platform, and then you can have maybe junior engineers ramp up their careers on it. Who knows?
But then you turn over a whole nother rock, and you have to start the junior engineer discussion. You know, will we have junior engineers to manage the tools that the senior engineers build?
Yeah. All right. Any other interesting things come across your guys' inbox this week?
I did actually I'm just now grabbing the link for it, but one of my associates, and let me see if I can get to the chat here. I'll drop the link in here. I haven't even looked at it, so it's like literally fresh off the presses here. But he's been working a lot with OpenWebUI and Olama, and he's put together, I guess, what is like some sort of SDK to work with OpenWebUI from the CLI. So I, for one, use Makefiles to manage my OpenWebUI and Olama instances. So if this is like a little bit more codified way that can, maybe streamline some of the development that I'm doing, then I'm down for using a more packaged approach.
Yeah, I was at a DevOps days where somebody was showing me that OpenWebUI. Definitely piqued my interest. Haven't set it up yet. So this makes that easier.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty slick and easy to use out of the box if you want to run LLMs locally. And there's other tools that you can use. LLM Studio is another one that I've looked at, but I think it has some backdoor telemetry that people aren't all that happy with. Olama definitely to manage your models, and then OpenWebUI interfaces with Olama. And you can do almost all the configuration from the OpenWebUI interface. But again, like we were talking about earlier, it's a UI, right? So you maybe, the stuff is captured there, but you lose some of the fidelity of actually interacting with it. Some of the, what I want to say, repeatable processes that you can build around, scripts or something that's codified, defined, documented, et cetera, et cetera. So if there's an SDK that supports that, I'm down for it.
All right, thanks for sharing. This prompted something I realized I skipped here, which was a vulnerability in NX, which is a monorepo build tool for JavaScript, TypeScript projects. This is familiar. If you're familiar with Turbo Repo, this was like the OG for JavaScript monorepos. So apparently a compromised build of this got pushed, and if you ran that, it would publish. Oh man, hold on. Let me log in here again. Why now? One second, still trying to log in here. All right. Yeah, so we were just talking about this NX build manager for monorepos for TypeScript. Has like 2.5 million daily active users, so it's a very popular project. So you can see already some of these compromised repositories on GitHub when I checked earlier. Some of these are like by researchers testing for themselves. Some of these other ones might not be that. Let's see, this has the results file. So this is an encrypted file with some of that user's secrets on there. Supposedly, unless that person's base64 encoding something for fun. Yeah. Anyways, just another one for the books. Oh, what was interesting about this compromise? So you know how antivirus and malware detectors and all those look for signatures. What this one does is if it detects you have Claude Code or Codex, I think, it would try and call that to have it perform actions on your behalf. Like, hey, find all my wallets on my computer and encrypt them and commit them to this repo. And it would do the same thing with passwords. So nuts. All right. All right. Any Michael, any other talking points?
No, I think that's it for me.
All right. So why don't we see if there's any questions we can answer today on the call. Anybody struggling with anything? Is there any like higher level architectural questions, philosophical questions, DevOps related that we can workshop on the call today?
Curious if anyone uses Bazel before.
Yeah, I can add 2 cents, but not much more. We did a project years ago for a team that came from Google, wanted to use Terraform, didn't want to use Make for obvious reasons, and wanted to use Bazel. So we implemented it. I don't know how well it worked in the end for them. Would not try it again. Bazel felt very complicated and an esoteric syntax, if you ask me. Do you use Bazel?
Just curious, and then I asked Warp to, because I was doing an old tutorial to learn from it, and then I asked Warp to, it doesn't work. It asked it to fix it, and it fixed it for me with a
Oh, really?
newer version of Bazel mod, the way they do modules now.
Okay,
It's pretty cool,
cool.
and it worked.
What's the underlying project that you're using Bazel with?
No, just experimenting on different types of builds, Python and container and Go. Yeah, just basically building from monorepo that
Got it.
takes different types of.
All right. Let's see what else. Anybody else have interesting tools they're kicking around? Right. I think that's it then. I'm out of material for today, so if there's no questions, I guess we'll end a little bit early. Going once,
I
twice.
have a question.
Go for it, Wasey.
So I know that I've talked to you before about how we've, been trying to put out AWS and versus, better ways. Has anyone had experience with moving away from the landing zone accelerator to like account factory for Terraform? Or other ways to better vend accounts, I guess.
Are you talking about importing what were the original like landing zones into Control Tower?
No,
Or
I have that already. I have landing zone and the code pipeline and all that stuff. It's still in there. But I'm talking like if leaving that there, but using like account factory for Terraform, like being able to shift from those higher level constructs inside of AWS, right? Of where that kind of happens. Because that's like the service catalog and stuff level, right? Is that like a real big rough patch? I like that. That's kind of a hard architecture question, probably, right? Like to try to solve on a call, but like,
I think it's interesting.
what sort of?
I don't know. It's not something I can talk about, so definitely going to hand this over to anybody else who has more experience with that. Everything we do is native Terraform for everything: provisioning, the
Yeah.
organization, the accounts, the service control policies, config rules, etc. is all Terraform. And that's for me, because it's our baby, I guess it's an easier mental model, but it's also easier to understand when everything's in Terraform.
Oh yeah, 100%. I bitch all the time at these guys for, or sorry, about
Yeah.
what their tool does. But what about just like Account Factory in general, or just the concepts of what it does, right? I haven't gone down that rabbit hole yet. So whether it's AFT itself or how Cloud Posse does it, like what is that? I guess what are the hardships at some of those levels for vending or anything maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I would be able to talk about hardships that we have maybe, or some rough edges that we have still.
Mhm.
Well, I think one of the major rough edges with account factories for Terraform is that when you make any changes, you have no real great way to review those before rolling it out en masse, right?
100%.
So
Yeah.
that means like, that is like the definition of you can only be a 10x engineer to work on this. You do not want to
Yeah.
put that up to anyone else to touch it. And it's amazing that I guess with AWS throwing their weight behind it, they get away with being able to say, this is the best practice, this is how you do it. And I think from anyone approaching this from another perspective, like with the Terraform perspective, it's to be taken with a grain of salt. The nice thing is that it works in the end, and yeah, you get an account with a state backend and a VPC or whatever provision, and you can stick your other CloudFormation templates in there and whatnot. I would say the rough edges from our perspective is discovery, if you will.
Mm.
And what do I mean by that? Or introspection. So when you provision an account in that with Terraform, great, easy to do. Then you're going to provision other resources in there. And then you need IAM roles set up, and you need configuration to use those IAM roles. And historically, we did a lot of that dynamically, like have one role that bootstraps, and then you can look up the other roles from that role,
Mm.
or we have a script that generates a static AWS config file that you can use. And I'm not really happy with either of those solutions, and yet you need something to make it automatic. So when you have the factory provision the account, how do you also stage the config related to that account? Like that account has an account ID, and you might need that account ID in order to set up other trust relationships. For example,
Right.
you have an artifacts account with an ECR repository, and now you need to share Docker images with that account, and it needs that. So trying to do some of that fully orchestrated with infrastructure as code can be tricky. And this is where something where if you had a dynamic state database that you could update, like with a system initiative, it might become easier. But it opens up a whole nother can of worms with security then, I guess, on updating that state.
Yeah. I mean that makes sense, and it's what I've sort of expected and experienced, even with their tool. Like I said, I give them quite a bit of feedback all the time, because you're exactly right. I mean, even just from the account vending perspective, like that happens so early in even the pipeline they have, that there's no review. There's nothing. It's like as soon as you put it in there, it's going to do it. And it's a completely different mindset when looking at something like Terraform, where you have that ability versus what they have, which can exist in different levels of that pipeline. But I guess it's more refreshing, even though it for me to even hear, even though it's not exactly like, hey, here's something you can do that'll solve this right out of the box,
Yeah.
or even whatever, that those that the issues that I'm facing are not unique and aren't just easily solved, with swapping something else out, right? Because that gives
Not
me,
crazy.
yeah,
Yeah, you're not crazy.
exactly, right? Like I know that this is blue, but like why isn't it looking blue? Essentially, So that's good.
It's a similar argument to running Terraform in Kubernetes to me, vis-a-vis like
Mm.
control plane or similar solutions. What I haven't liked about that is yeah, it's infrastructure as code, and yeah, it solves the easy part. The easy part is deploying. It's so easy to run Terraform apply, right?
So
But you can look at code that as a human, you would not catch or spot a single problem with what it's doing, right? But the implications of making that change are unknown. And that's the part that these systems that automatically deploy without approval gates concern me, vis-a-vis like Argo CD for infrastructure deployments. App deployments, whatever, it's disposable containers that you can just redeploy another version. Databases, not so much.
no. Yeah, that was like literally the main thing. Like as soon as I did it, like I think I might have ran their pipeline twice, and I told them, yeah, I'm going to use this as a account vending machine, and that is it. Everything else is going into Terraform. I don't care if I have to write it all by hand. It's just I'm not going to
Yeah.
touch this. Like I'm not putting SCPs or anything in there.
Yeah.
Because you run it blind, and if you aren't version pinning it, like, man, like, yeah, you're just going to destroy, like you could mess so many things up.
Yeah. I,
So
I don't know. I almost feel like they just came up with that for SEO purposes. Account factories for Terraform basically does nothing for Terraform.
yeah.
Yeah. What else? Did you see were you on the call last week?
I was on. I don't remember if I was on the entire time or if I think I cut short on the back end. I can't remember.
Yeah. Just want to make sure you saw the new component we released. It might be helpful for some of the things you're doing. How are you guys vending repositories for GitHub?
I did see that part, and funny enough, I actually wrote my own
Okay.
factory before, but I do like yours. I haven't gone through it all just yet. I also never really came across, I think the one of the big parts of what you were saying was the rate limiting, right? For GitHub's API when you get into those factors, right?
Yep.
What I actually wrote previously was a factory that created factories, and those factories would create repos,
Mhm.
so that state would be closer to the repos themselves versus at those exponential levels, I guess. And it was working out, and then I left the company, so that's whatever. But um, it's nice to see. And this is one of the next things, at least the top 5, I would say, on my list of getting my hands on, because I've got quite a bit of bootstrapping done on the AWS side, and need to get consumers right using Terraform and stuff, and it's a long path for me, with the teams that we have, and this is something that's definitely going to help, right? Because I don't want to have to individually manage people's branch policies and like all these other things that I need to be set
Exactly.
like perfectly across these realms. So
The other interesting thing, the reason why I brought it up, only because you were talking about account factories for Terraform, vending AWS accounts. Another pattern I've seen, especially in the enterprise, is where you vend a set of AWS accounts, but you also vend a repository for those accounts. So that team has the code base to get started and using those AWS accounts. So if you found a way to fuse those two things together, that'd be pretty cool.
yeah, that is a very good thought.
And this is where you really wish you could use Terraform for the accounts, because then you could define, hey, provision these 3 accounts and then provision this repository.
Yeah,
Use this repository template, for Java, enterprise Java app, right? And
yeah,
yeah, it works well.
yeah. That is a good thought, though. I'm gonna have to keep that one in mind, because we are going to have a pretty sprawling number of accounts, so that we don't end up with essentially monolithic accounts for a lot of teams, and I can limit those impacts and billing and all that other stuff. So
Yeah, you get
yeah, that would be interesting.
cost visibility.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
appreciate it.
Yeah, sure thing. All right. Well, Isaac says, I've used Aft. If you have any deep knowledge of AWS, write something yourself because I disagree with a lot of their design decisions. Oh, okay, gotcha. So he's using account Terraform. I didn't get the abbreviation there. All right.
Yeah, I did what it ended up being.
That seems to echo what everyone else here has said. So
Yeah, I appreciate it.
all right. Well, thanks everyone for your time today. We are out of time. We'll be back next week at the same time, same place. Register on Zoom or register at cloudposse.com rather. If you want to join these calls live, go to cloudposse.com/officehours. We will be posting a video of this to our YouTube channel. So check out youtube.com/cloudposse if there's anything you want to refer back to or share with your team. From what we discussed today. And then lastly, if you're interested in getting any support from Cloud Posse, we do have different support offerings, predominantly for users of our Cloud Posse open source, like our Terraform modules, Atmos, or our commercial reference architecture for AWS. So all of that is supported at cloudposse.com/support. With that said, have a great rest of your week, everyone. Talk to you later.
Bye.